Everybody for, oh,
sorry.
There you go. No, you're good.
Audio.
No problem. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Monica and everybody for having me here today. I'm really excited to talk to all of you. My name is Sonia Hingorany, and I have a UCLA degree, graduated in 2008 with a BS in electrical engineering and a minor in cognitive science. And one of the things I want to talk today about is obviously my journey, my professional journey, and I'd also take the opportunity to introduce a project that I've been working on called MyMicrojourney, and you can see it there at the bottom of the slide. I'll save that more towards the end, but it is something that I have been working on for about 6 months now, just in my spare time outside of my full-time job. So thank you again for allowing me to be here with you all today and kind of tell you a little bit about me. We can go to the next slide. Oh, yep, perfect. All right, so I call this phase one, the early years. I have a few photos just to kind of navigate the conversation, but I was born in Massachusetts. I won't tell you what year. But you could probably figure it out. And my family, we were there for a couple of years. We moved to Colorado when I was really young, about 2 years old. And I spent, my elementary school in Colorado, and I loved it. Colorado is an interesting place. You get a good taste of every season. I spent a lot of time outside when I was a kid. We moved to Orange County, so California, Southern California, when I was about 11 years old. And this actually was really hard for me. I remember when I was growing up, I had a great time. I think growing up in Colorado, I had great friends. I played sports. And I distinctly remember hearing from my parents that my dad got a new job opportunity in California, and we were going to be moving there. And I was really, really impacted by that. And I think while, it was hard to make that transition at a young age, moving kind of, halfway across the country, I think I learned at a young age what it meant to be taken out of your comfort zone and have to ask yourself questions like, am I likable? And, do people want to be friends with me? And those are hard questions, I think, for anybody to ask, but for a kid to ask, I think it's very impactful. And so, as hard as it was, I think that getting out of my comfort zone, though, at an earlier age, has served me well. I think it's made my transitions through different phases of my life probably a little bit easier, although some of them have been hard, definitely in my adult life. But I think I bounced back at an earlier age, and I think that's given me a level of confidence that maybe I wouldn't have had, I guess, if I didn't go through that experience as a child. So we moved to Orange County, and I attended Esperanza High School in Anaheim. I played tennis, soccer. I was in orchestra for a few years. I was very involved in student clubs. I'm sure you're all aware of National Honor Society AP program. I did all of that, and I had a great time in high school. I made my best friends now are still the friends that I had in high school and that I grew up with. I graduated in 2003, and I was so fortunate to be admitted to the Henry Simuley School of Engineering at UCLA. UCLA was such a great time. I actually attended from 2003 to 2008, so it took 5 years to complete my undergraduate degree in electrical engineering. I also did a minor in cognitive science, like I mentioned. And I took an opportunity while I was at UCLA to study some other things. So I did study Hindi. I learned how to read and write. It was always something that I wanted to learn how to do, and I didn't know when I would have the opportunity to learn that again. And a lot of my friends were taking the class, and I said, well, why not? Might as well just learn what I can while I'm at UCLA, one of the best institutions in the world. So, enjoyed the classes, enjoyed engineering. I learned a lot there. I was also very involved in student organizations. So you can see on the slide, Society of Women Engineers and Indian Student Union. And, these organizations were really important to me, I think, while I was at UCLA. And basically, you know, I got to really kind of dig into my culture at ISU, right? I spent a lot of time, you know, planning culture shows and working on different, you know, cultural related activities during my time there. And at SWE, it was a good support system that I had where you were, you know, navigating engineering, academics, and future steps with other like-minded women. And so I made some good friends in SWE, and we kind of helped each other get through UCLA and figure out what we wanted to do post-grad. So, you know, the clubs were very important to me. And the people I met through them really helped me kind of navigate my UCLA experience. While I was at UCLA, I didn't actually put this on the slide. I realized that later. I had a few different internships. And I would tell you that that those internships were, I think, the best thing that I did in my undergrad. Not realizing it at the time, but in retrospect, you know, learning what it means to work as a corporate professional, I think, was super pivotal for me during my time at UCLA. I interned twice at Broadcom, had 2 different roles during my summer internships there, worked in the lab, you know, understood what it kind of meant to deliver results on time and deliver high quality deliverables. But I didn't necessarily see myself working there, I think, full time. And so, you know, the last summer I had between my 4th and my 5th year, I said, okay, well, let me see what else is out there, and let me see if there's, you know, another company that I may be interested in. I think at that point I knew that I did not want to pursue a master's degree right away. And so I remember going to a career fair in my 4th year, and I put my resume in at Accenture and didn't know too much about the company, but it was interesting from the recruiter that I spoke to. And you know, I ended up interviewing and getting an internship offer at Accenture to work up in Sacramento, actually, for a summer at a government client. And I loved it. I loved working for Accenture that summer. I was able to, the culture there was, I think, more in line with what I was looking for. I worked on a systems integration project, and I got to work with a bunch of different people. And I realized, like, oh, I really like, you know, gathering requirements and figuring out how to build a system and testing. That was really something that I enjoyed, and I enjoyed kind of the colleagues that I had, and, you know, was able to secure a full-time offer from Accenture, and did end up there full-time. Before I moved to post undergrad, the one thing I did want to mention is during graduation, I remember before graduation, I remember an email coming out from faculty, and they said they were looking for a student speaker for commencement. And I remember reading it, and I remember thinking, you know, I think I can speak. Okay, I would speak at culture shows, at ISU culture shows, and I was kind of, it just sat with me in my mind, and I didn't respond. I didn't apply. It was just kind of lingering there. And then I realized, okay, maybe I should try applying for this. I don't know if engineers can be speakers, but let me try it. And so I auditioned to be a speaker for the commencement, and I was selected for that. And so I actually spoke as a student speaker at commencement in 2008 in front of a lot of people. I never had spoken in front of, I think, that many people before. And it went great. And I kind of overcame you know, my preconceived notion that, you know, engineers can't be speakers, or maybe I couldn't speak in front of that many people. So, you know, lesson learned there. If you have those types of opportunities that come your way, grab them. You know, I think you'll likely regret not doing that. And that was an amazing experience for me and my family and some of my friends that were able to attend. So fast forward, actually, we can go to the next slide, to the consulting years. And so I called the next phase about 5 years, the consulting years. And so I took my full-time opportunity at Accenture. I moved up to San Francisco. And during my time in Sacramento, the interns and I would drive down to San Francisco and spend our weekends there. And I fell in love with the city. So when I got an opportunity from Accenture, they said, "Where do you want to work?" My folks were like, "Oh yeah, you're going to work in LA." And I said, "No, I'm actually going to move. I'm going to go up and explore San Francisco." So I got an opportunity to work full time in San Francisco for Accenture. And I think the world of Accenture, I think it's a great company to work for. Right out of college, it teaches you a lot about how to be a professional. They train you well. I worked with a lot of clients, so you kind of get prepared on how you need to engage with the client. And so it was a great experience for my first few years. I was local to the Bay Area. I worked in our financial services client area, and also in our hardware, software, performance engineering practice. So I was assigned to a client in the Bay Area, and I spent pretty much, I think, 3 years at this client. Didn't have to travel, just would drive to work. A lot of the challenges I think that new consultants and analysts have when coming on into consulting companies is the travel. And so it was good for me that I was, transitioning into what it meant to work as a corporate professional, and then not having to deal so much with the travel, at least in the beginning. So, I drove into work, and really enjoyed, I think, my first few years there. And I remember when we kind of decided to part ways with the client. At that time, you go back on the bench, is what they say, and you're kind of open to be staffed in different places. And I remember talking to the partner that I worked for a few years, and he said, "So you're going to be getting on a plane in the next few weeks to go to New York for a new assignment." And he's like, "Enjoy it." And I was like shocked. And I was like, "That's really scary. That's exciting all at the same time." But, again, like with transitions that come your way, if you've gone through more of them, they're a lot easier. And I was scared, but I did it, and I jumped on a plane, and I was on a plane pretty much every week for the next couple of years, traveling a lot for work. The reason I actually have H&R Block on the slide is because one year I worked in 6 different states, and so I had to go to H&R Block to do my taxes. It was the first time that I actually had my taxes done. Otherwise, I was doing them myself. So that's just kind of a funny point there, I guess. But I was on the plane a lot. I ended up giving up my place in San Francisco, kind of shifting my home base down to the LA area. It was closer to my parents' house. Spent a lot of time on the plane. It started to get hard. Too much travel. It's kind of mentally, emotionally exhausting, physically exhausting, of course. And, so spent a lot of time on the plane, flying from San Francisco to New York or LA to New York every week, and started thinking about what are my next steps. I decided to study for the GMAT with all that time on the plane, and started thinking about grad school, and maybe there was another option there in terms of like, do I want to potentially work at a startup? I was still kind of going back and forth between San Francisco too. I would spend some weekends there. So I actually pursued both paths. I studied for my GMAT. I started researching schools, MBA schools, and I started to talk to startups. I would meet with folks when I would come back on the weekends, see what they're doing, if I was interested in any of them. And what I realized at that time was, I said, okay, I see myself at a startup, but I wasn't finding that thing that I was willing to, pour your blood, sweat, and tears over, as they say. I just wasn't finding that thing. And if I was going to work for a startup, it needed to be that. And that's when I learned a lot about myself actually during that time, that I'll do it at some point, but not right now. At the same time, I kept pursuing business school. To be honest, I wasn't even really sure if I wanted to go back to business school. For me and my family background, you go to grad school. That's kind of how it is. You get a master's, and that may be right or wrong, but that's a part of me, and it was definitely one of the things I considered as I thought about grad school. Applied to a few MBA schools. I was very fortunate. I got into Carnegie Mellon, Tepper School of Business. They offered me a full scholarship there. Couldn't turn it down. I wanted to pursue technology, operations, more as a specialization, I think, in your MBA. I studied a lot about the school. I found out where people go after they study there, and you'll hear me talk about this quite a bit here, but Amazon was one of the big employers. So the more I learned about it, the school, I said, I can't turn this opportunity down. Truthfully, I put in my acceptance. I ended up going to Pittsburgh, and even one quarter in, I remember at the end of the quarter, I realized I think I made the right decision. So as you go through your careers and you're thinking about different decisions and opportunities, sometimes you don't know what the right thing to do is. I think I collected all the data points that I could, all the information that I could at the time. And sometimes you have to go a little bit with a gut. That's maybe a little bit odd coming from someone who works at a completely data-driven company, but I believe that. I believe that in life, you collect the information that you can, you collect the data that you can, and it's time to make a decision, and there's some amount of gut you have to go with, and that's what I did with Carnegie Mellon. So happy that I did it. Don't have any regrets whatsoever. I try to live my life where I'm not regretting, right? I try to always thinking through those decisions, but ended up going to Tepper, and it was great. Very quantitative MBA program. I joined the business and technology clubs, the operations club. Got heavily involved with those clubs and the people. Met a lot of people through those clubs. I was able to travel. I'm sorry. Next slide. I'm like jumping forward. There we go. Sorry about that. Tepper and the Business and Technology Club, and traveled and studied in Hong Kong, which was very cool. Got to do that in my second year with my friends, and we traveled all over Southeast Asia. We got to study at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and spent 4 weeks, 3 weeks in Hong Kong, 1 week in actually Guangzhou in China, studying. Got to visit like different companies, and then again we traveled over Southeast Asia before the program, so got to spend some time in Japan and Vietnam and Cambodia, and it was just a really amazing experience. I wanted to travel when I was at UCLA, but it was hard. And if any of you are considering studying abroad, we should definitely talk. I wasn't able to do it in undergrad. I kind of wish that I did. I think it was hard with engineering, but grad school, I was like, this is the perfect opportunity to do that. And I definitely pursued that while I was there. And then, during my summer internship time between the 2 years in business school, I was fortunate to get hired by Amazon for an internship in Dallas. So I actually worked in a fulfillment center, kind of a different experience. It was our first Kiva Robotics site. So Amazon acquired Kiva Robotics. I think it was in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. It's now branded Amazon Robotics, but I worked at our first Kiva site where we actually implemented the technology, and it was in production, running all over the FC. I was able to work at that site right when we implemented Kiva. And I was just blown away by our operations, what we do in the fulfillment centers, and just remember the 12 weeks that I was there, just absolutely loving the company and everything about it and my project. And I had never dug into a business problem, as much as I had that summer. I knew it inside out, and I had never felt that way before about what I knew and what I could do to maybe change things. So, clearly I drank the Kool-Aid, and we can go to the next slide. I ended up with a offer from Amazon. Actually ended up with an offer for the fulfillment center to run like an operations, as an operations manager in a fulfillment center. You actually run like the shift in an FC. It's not what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to work for Amazon. So I was able to secure an offer in Seattle in our corporate operations group. And I'm calling this the day one years, because if you know Amazon, day one is our motto. It's always day one. It's always the first time you're looking at something, and you need to be ambitious, and you need to go as hard as you would if it was like the last day you're solving a problem, right? So I call this time day one years, and that's exactly how it is. I actually got put on a transportation organization at Amazon. And I was like, why am I in this team? This doesn't really, fit with my background. So I remember talking to my boss and trying to understand, like, how did I get put on this team? I wasn't able to connect the dots. And he said, your time at Accenture was pretty critical as he was going through some resumes. And he said, you've worked with external parties, you've worked with clients. I need that in this role. So this is a procurement team that I was assigned to. And that team actually manages the relationships and runs all the contract negotiations that Amazon does with the third-party carriers across North America. So UPS, USPS, Canada Post, all of these carriers that you're aware of. I worked with all of them. I did contract negotiations right alongside my manager with these carriers, and it was fascinating. I never thought I would negotiate contracts in my career, and it's one of the best experiences I've honestly had. I learned so much about that business, what it means to negotiate, how negotiations has so many different layers, how you can run a data-driven negotiation. Never thought I would do that. I loved it. I spent almost 4 years in that space. And, I did well there. But, it comes a time where you look at you should check yourself every so often. I looked at my resume and I said, wow, been pretty much on the business side for about 6 years now. What do I do? And Amazon is great because, you can move around. And I was able to get an opportunity to come over kind of back to like the tech side, right? So now I'm at AWS, and we can go to the next slide. I call it the trailblazer years, not actually so much because of AWS, and I'll get to why, but was able to move over to AWS 2 years ago. There was a woman that worked in AWS at the time, and her and I had a mutual colleague. And I think the mutual colleague told her, I was working in the transportation space for a while. So she reached out to me. We had some conversations, and I was able to secure a role within our data center delivery space. And I'm still there. It's been almost 2 years. It's a good group to work in terms of it strikes like the right balance for me in between business and operations and technology. And that's really what my background is. I think that's kind of the general theme of my career and what I'm doing. It's a very fast-paced environment, sometimes too fast, arguably, but we're doing amazing work, very cutting edge. We're growing. These are all good problems to have, right? I'm not complaining by any means. It's really been a great place, and I think we're going to hopefully continue to do very good things. So like I was saying, I don't call this my trailblazing years just because of AWS. Actually, I'm calling it that more because of MyMicrojourney, and I'll talk just a little bit about that for a few minutes. So, we've all been through a lot. I think this past year, I'm actually down in Southern California with my folks. Now I have a place in Seattle, but I have opted to be here with my parents, and my sister and her family live in Los Angeles. So it's been good for me to be with family. As I've been down here, there's not too much going on. So there's a lot of time to think. And, I started to think a lot about during the pandemic, what is my passion? What do I like doing? And, I like mentoring. I like coaching people. I like helping people navigate their careers because it's hard. And, I've tried to outline my career for all of you, hopefully in as simple a way as possible. But the truth is it's hard. And so as I just was kind of thinking, like, how do I want to help people and give back? I started thinking a lot about Zoom calls, and this is tiring, right? Like the two-way conversation all day can be very tiring. But I really started to focus on this idea of like asynchronous communication, and maybe a good way for people to learn about others' journeys is through a video. So for the last 6 months or so, I have been working on this platform. It's called MyMicrojourney, and basically what it does is it serves as I call it a personalized masterclass for an individual's career. Through making access to professional stories and experiences easier than it has been. So my microjourney features microjourneys, which are short videos that showcase the highlights and lowlights of someone's professional experience. And it gives just the right amount of information and insight to the person that's viewing it to send them a meaningful message, but wanting more, right? So if you're a user and you come on the platform, you would receive a curated micro journey that aligns with you, and then have the ability to connect with the person in the video and take a conversation further if interested. So I'm currently actually spending a lot of my time working on that platform. I'm learning a lot through doing that, and I'm very passionate about it as I continue to talk to students. I'm reminded of, the challenge in navigating your career. And honestly, when I talk to students, I feel like I'm almost talking to myself when I was in college. Not much has really changed. And while I think navigating your career to an extent should be in art, I think it can be more of a science. And that's kind of what I'm working on. So I'm happy to chat about that in a little bit more detail. And I think the last slide there was a Q&A. So happy to open it up. And thank you again so much for giving me an opportunity today.
Thank you so much. That was so great. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or ask in the chat.
Oh, we have a raised hand from Emily.
Hi.
Emily.
So I've noticed you've moved around a lot. You've lived in several different places.
Yeah.
For me, it's quite the opposite. Aside from living in the dorms at UCLA, I've just lived in the same house with my parents my entire life, which is just a 2-hour drive from UCLA. So when I moved into the dorms, we did it by car. And so I've never had that experience of moving to a completely different part of the country. But in a few months, I'm coming up on a job transfer where I'm going to be moving to Chicago. So this will be like my first really big move. So I'm wondering if you have any tips about living in a different part of the country, working with different people in a different office, or anything related to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think so much of moving and, kind of getting yourself ready for that new experience is honestly, I think it's more mental than anything, right? And it's making sure that you are going into that new chapter with, an open mind, but a cautious open mind, I guess, if you will, right? Like be open to, new things and new people and new routines. But there's a part of you that is you, and you want to stay grounded on certain things. And I think you have to figure out what those things are. But I think in any phase of life, it's just mental preparation, right? And I think anytime I'm going into like a new role or, moving, there's always like some level of nerves doing that. But I actually try to fast forward a little bit and think about when I reflect on like this situation, what do I want to remember, right? And I try to like live my life that way. That anytime I'm going into something, it's like, well, how do I actually want to remember this experience, right? And that drives me to, I think, do the things that I do. So if I'm in a new city, I could stay home, or, I could join a meetup, for example, right? Like a meetup in a new city where if you're interested in, I'll just pick a volleyball, or, you like playing poker or something, you can join these meetups and you can go meet people in the city that are doing like hobbies, like similar to yours, versus just meeting people at work, right? I think that's a great thing about, where we're at today in terms of the web and technology is like, you can find things, you have to be careful. That's why I'm saying cautious, open mind, right? You can find those types of communities wherever you go. And it's just about kind of putting yourself out there to do that. So I think so much of it is just mentally preparing, but it's also finding those types of communities where, you can join. I think in terms of like professional I always tell people that are newer in coming into my team or in the company, just like, it's hard right now, but go have coffee with someone, or go have lunch with them, or go, if you like to kind of go to bars, go to a bar, have a drink with them. People are different, when you're taking them outside of the four walls of wherever it is that you work, or outside of the Zoom calls. Again, it's very hard right now, but anytime someone's kind of newer, or, on the other token, someone's feeling challenged with a certain person on the team, I always tell them, go just have a chat about something other than work, chat about family, chat about friends, chat about sports, and you see a different side to that person. So, I think those are things that you can do as you move into a new city, a new role, new job. But again, so much of it is just mentally preparing. And also remind yourself where you're at right now today. You've got to where you are today, and you should feel confident and have confidence in that you've made it here. You will make it to that next step, right? And I think it gets easier personally. In my career and in my life in general, I think, it's a lot easier to make some of these transitions. Right now I've worked for 4 different managers, for example, in the past 2 years, and it used to be oh my gosh, I have a new manager, what am I going to do? And it's well, I don't like moving around too much, but it's actually good in some ways. You learn what you want, what you like, and what you don't like, right? You're building who you are as a person, you're building your style. And the only way to really do that and serve yourself well is if you have all these different experiences, because you can pick and choose what you want and leave what you don't, Hopefully that helped.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point about connecting with people in the new city that share similar hobbies. Because preparing for the move, all I'm really thinking about is where am I going to live?
Yeah.
and going into the new office, but things outside of work is also something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Yep.
Great, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So we have a few questions in the chat, so I can go ahead and read them out. Tina is wondering, how do you think your cognitive science minor has helped your career?
Interesting question. I don't know really if it has, I'll be honest. And I think that I actually think that's okay. I took cognitive science because I was just really kind of interested in it in college, about how we process information and how we as humans think, and how our behaviors, what drives behaviors. I don't really, maybe, I don't know. I think it's hard to actually answer that question. It's a good one. I've always kind of been interested in the more human side of things. So I can't really say if it's helped me or not, actually. But what I will say is, take the classes. I mean, if you have the bandwidth in your schedules, and you heard me talk about taking Hindi, for example. I had a little bit of bandwidth in my schedule. You're at an amazing institution, and you may go back again for graduate programs and stuff, but a lot of you may not. And I think if you can carve out the time, for sure, take the classes that are interesting to you, even if it's not getting you a minor, even if it's not part of your major and it's just something that you want to listen into. I highly recommend that you do. But I don't know, I can't honestly say that taking that minor has really helped, but I think I did something that I learned something that I wanted to learn. Right. And I think that is important. Actually, I realize how important that is now versus even when I was there. Just learning something so you can learn and become more educated. I put a lot more weight on now than I used to.
Great, thank you so much.